Earth's 4.5 billion years ago. The year is 4.5 billion. No, seriously, it's 4.5 billion BC, because at that time, there was no year zero. The year one was the year that Jesus Christ was born, even though he was born in the year one. He was actually born in the 7th century BC, but let's not get distracted. Anyways, the point is that 4.5 billion years ago, there were no people, no houses, no cars, no electricity, no nothing. But there was a big old ball of gas and dust floating around in the middle of nowhere. Well, middle of nowhere is a relative term, because if you consider that this ball of gas and dust would end up becoming our solar system, and thus the place where we live, I guess it wasn't really in the middle of nowhere. Anyways, this ball of gas and dust was big, very big. In fact, it weighed 333,000 times more than Earth. Yes, the entire solar system, including the sun, the planets, and everything else, weighed 333,000 times more than Earth. That's just crazy. But the thing is that this huge ball of gas and dust wasn't really a ball at first. It was a big old cloud, and this cloud didn't stay put. It floated around in the cold, dark corners of space. One day, however, something happened. Something that would change everything. Literally everything. The cloud collapsed in on itself. Why? Who knows? Clouds don't really talk, so we'll never know why they do what they do. But whatever the reason, the cloud collapsed in on itself, and as it did so, it picked up speed. Gravity, the force that pulls everything towards each other, started to take hold and pulled the cloud even tighter. And as it tightened, it spun faster and faster. And then, bam, the sun was born. But the story doesn't end there, because when the sun was born, it didn't just bring light and warmth into our lives. It also brought forth a bunch of extra stuff. As the sun formed, the leftover material formed a disk around it and eventually coalesced into the planets. 8 planets, to be exact: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. And all these planets were hot, hot, hot. Like imagine the hottest oven you've ever seen. Now imagine a planet that's 100 times hotter than that. Welcome to the solar system 4.5 billion years ago. Earth was a fiery ball of molten rock. Meteorites constantly bombarded its surface. Volcanic activity was intense. For millions of years, there was no solid land, no oceans, no life, just a turbulent, hostile world. But slowly things began to change. The surface started to cool, and a solid crust formed. Water vapor released from volcanic eruptions, along with icy comets that crashed into Earth, helped to create the first oceans. These early oceans were the cradle of life. Around 3.8 billion years ago, the first life appeared in the form of simple, single-celled organisms known as prokaryotes. These tiny life forms fed on chemicals in their environment and could survive in extreme conditions. They were the first step in a long journey of biological evolution. For billions of years, life remained microscopic. The planet was ruled by bacteria and other tiny organisms. But then something extraordinary happened around 2.5 billion years ago. A type of bacteria called cyanobacteria evolved the ability to perform photosynthesis. This process used sunlight to produce energy and released oxygen as a byproduct. Over time, the oxygen released by these bacteria began to accumulate in the atmosphere. This event, known as the Great Oxygenation Event, changed the world forever. At first, oxygen was toxic to many existing life forms and caused mass extinctions, but it also allowed the development of more complex life. By 1.5 billion years ago, new types of cells appeared, called eukaryotes. Unlike simpler prokaryotes, eukaryotic cells had internal structures such as nuclei and mitochondria. These cells formed the foundation for all complex life on Earth. Some of these cells began to live together, forming multicellular organisms. Life was no longer limited to individual cells. Organisms could now specialize, develop tissues, and grow into larger, more diverse forms. Around 600 million years ago, during the Ediacaran period, soft-bodied animals appeared in the oceans. These strange creatures were unlike anything alive today. They left behind few fossils, but their presence showed that animal life was beginning to evolve. Then, around 541 million years ago, came a sudden burst of life known as the Cambrian explosion. In a short period of time, all major animal groups emerged in the oceans. Creatures with hard shells, jointed limbs, eyes, and complex body structures evolved rapidly. Trilobites were among the most successful of these animals and thrived for hundreds of millions of years. As time passed, life continued to evolve and diversify. Fish became the dominant creatures in the oceans, and some developed bones and jaws. Plants began to grow along the edges of water bodies, and by 400 million years ago, they had colonized the land. Insects followed soon after, buzzing and crawling among the greenery. The Earth was no longer a barren rock, but a planet teeming with life, both in water and on land. Around 360 million years ago, the first amphibians made the leap from water to land. These creatures could breathe air and move on for legs, though they still relied on water to lay their eggs. Amphibians were followed by reptiles, which developed tough, scaly skin and eggs that could survive on dry land. Reptiles spread across the continents, which were slowly drifting together to form a giant landmass called Pangaea. But life faced many challenges. About 252 million years ago, the Earth experienced the largest extinction event in its history. Known as the Permian extinction, it wiped out nearly 90% of all species. The exact cause remains debated, but massive volcanic eruptions, climate change, and methane release are possible reasons. Life nearly vanished, but it found a way to recover from the ashes of the Permian extinction. Arose new animals, including the dinosaurs. These creatures first appeared around 230 million years ago, and over time grew to dominate the land. Dinosaurs came in many shapes and sizes, from tiny feathered runners to towering plant eaters and ferocious predators. For over 160 million years, they ruled the Earth. During this time, birds evolved from small feathered dinosaurs, gaining the ability to fly. Then about 66 million years ago, disaster struck again. A massive asteroid crashed into the Earth near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact caused wildfires, tsunamis, and blocked sunlight with dust clouds. It triggered the fifth mass extinction, killing off the Nanavian dinosaurs and many other species. But some life forms managed to survive. Among the survivors were mammals, small, warm-blooded animals that had lived in the shadows during the age of dinosaurs. With the dominant reptiles gone, mammals began to evolve rapidly, filling the empty ecological niches. Some mammals returned to the sea, becoming whales and dolphins. Others grew larger and adapted to forests, grasslands, and mountains. Around 50 million years ago, the first primates appeared, swinging through trees and using their hands to grasp branches. These early primates would eventually give rise to apes and humans. About 7 million years ago in Africa, the ancestors of modern humans split from the line that led to chimpanzees. Over time, they began to walk upright, use tools, and develop larger brains. Homo erectus was one of the first human species to leave Africa, spreading into Asia and Europe. They mastered fire, created simple shelters, and hunted in groups. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared around 30,000 years ago. They were capable of complex speech and abstract thinking. They painted caves, carved tools, and formed strong social bonds. Over time, they migrated across the globe, adapting to new climates and landscapes. And then something remarkable happened. Humans began to farm. They planted crops, domesticated animals, and settled in villages. This was the beginning of civilization. Cities rose along rivers where fertile land allowed large populations to grow. Writing systems were invented, governments formed, and religions took shape. The earliest civilizations emerged in Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China. Trade flourished, knowledge spread, and human history entered a new era. Over the next millennia, empires rose and fell, science advanced, and technology improved. People built roads, bridges, and ships. They explored new continents, crossed oceans, and mapped the stars. The printing press spread ideas. The steam engine powered industry, and the computer revolutionized communication. Humanity shaped the planet like never before, transforming forests into cities and rivers into power sources. Today we live in a world connected by technology and travel. Satellites orbit the Earth, capturing images of our changing climate. Spacecraft have explored every planet in the solar system, and humans have walked on the moon. Yet despite all this progress, the story of Earth reminds us that we are a small part of a vast and ancient journey. Every rock tells a tale of fire and pressure. Every ocean wave carries the memory of ancient cells. Every forest and desert is a page in Earth's diary. Life has endured asteroid impacts, ice ages, and mass extinctions. And still, it grows and changes, adapting to new challenges. The story of Earth is also the story of us, our ancestors, our children, and the world we all share. It is a story written in stone, in bone, and in the stars. And it is a story worth telling again and again.